What happens when humanity's youngest war hero returns home after single-handedly saving 3 colonies from alien invasion, only to discover that surviving high school might be her greatest challenge yet? Maya Chen thought facing down plasma-wielding Zephyrians was tough until she had to explain why she missed 2 years of algebra and why her classmates now call her the freak who talks to aliens. At 17, Maya has scars that tell stories of distant worlds, cybernetic implants that make her faster than any human should be, and memories of battles that would break veteran soldiers. But none of that prepared her for the whispers in hallways, the government agents watching her every move, or the discovery that her old high school has become ground zero for something far more sinister than teenage drama. When students start disappearing and Maya's alien allies begin sending cryptic warnings about an ancient threat awakening on Earth, she realizes that her war isn't over, it's just moved to a different battlefield. One where the enemy wears familiar faces and the stakes are higher than she ever imagined. This is the story of Maya Chen, the girl who saved the galaxy and came home to find that sometimes the real monsters are the ones you thought you knew. The transport shuttle touched down on Earth with barely a whisper, its advanced dampeners making the landing smoother than Maya Chen remembered from her childhood flights to visit her grandmother. Through the small porthole, she watched the familiar skyline of New Denver rise against the morning sky, unchanged despite everything that had happened in the galaxy over the past 2 years. The irony wasn't lost on her that she'd traveled millions of light-years to defend human colonies she'd never seen, only to return to a world that looked exactly as she'd left it. Maya pressed her palm against the cool metal wall of the shuttle and felt the subtle vibration of the engines winding down. The cybernetic implants along her spine tingled with residual energy from the ship's systems, a sensation she'd grown accustomed to during her time with the Galactic Defense Initiative. Her enhanced nervous system could interface with almost any technology now, a gift from the Nexari engineers who'd saved her life after the Battle of Kepler Station. It was one of many changes her body had undergone, most of which weren't visible to the naked eye. The shuttle door hissed open, and Maya stepped out onto the landing platform of the Denver spaceport. The morning air hit her enhanced senses like a symphony of information. She could smell the familiar mixture of urban pollution and mountain pine, hear conversations happening 3 levels below, and feel the electromagnetic signatures of hundreds of personal devices within a kilometer radius. For a moment, the sensory overload was overwhelming, and she had to consciously dial back her implant's sensitivity settings. "Welcome home, hero," said a voice behind her. Maya turned to see Director Sarah Walsh of the Galactic Defense Initiative's Earth Division approaching. The older woman's expression was carefully neutral, but Maya's enhanced perception caught the micro-expressions of concern and wariness that flitted across her features. Even her allies were still getting used to what Maya had become. "Director Walsh," Maya nodded respectfully. "I wasn't expecting a personal escort. The president wanted to make sure you received proper recognition for your service," Walsh replied, though her tone suggested this wasn't the whole truth. "However, there are some matters we need to discuss before you resume civilian life." Maya's enhanced hearing picked up the subtle stress patterns in Walsh's voice. Something was wrong, but she'd learned to be patient with bureaucrats. They had their own way of communicating, full of implications and carefully chosen words. "What kind of matters?" "Walk with me," Walsh said, gesturing toward a private elevator that would take them to the secure levels of the spaceport. As they descended, Walsh activated a privacy field generator, the device humming softly as it created a bubble of distorted space around them. Maya's implants immediately detected the energy signature, but she resisted the urge to analyze it too deeply. Some habits from the war were hard to break. "Maya, what you accomplished out there was unprecedented," Walsh began carefully. A 17-year-old civilian who not only survived first contact with hostile aliens but managed to broker peace with 3 different species and save multiple colonies. "The media wants to call you humanity's first galactic diplomat." "I just did what needed to be done," Maya replied, the same answer she'd given to dozens of debriefings. "Yes, but that's exactly what concerns us," Walsh said. "You've been changed, Maya. Enhanced. The medical reports show that your neural processing speed is now roughly 3 times that of an average human. Your reflexes, your sensory capabilities, your ability to interface with alien technology, you're no longer quite human, are you?" Maya had been expecting this conversation. She'd known that coming home wouldn't be simple, that there would be questions about what she'd become during her time in the stars. The Nexury biotechnology that had saved her life after she'd been nearly killed defending their homeworld had also fundamentally altered her biology. She was stronger, faster, smarter, and more perceptive than any baseline human had a right to be. "I'm still me," she said quietly. "Still Maya Chun from Denver, Colorado. I still remember learning to ride a bike in Washington Park and burning dinner when I tried to cook for my parents' anniversary." "But, you also remember things no human has ever experienced," Walsh pointed out. "You've seen the birth of a star, walked on worlds where the very concept of gravity works differently, and spoken with beings whose thought processes are so alien that our best xenopsychologists can barely comprehend them. You've been inside a Zephyrian battlemine link and survived the neural feedback that killed 3 of our best soldiers." The elevator stopped, and they stepped out into a secure conference room where several other officials were waiting. Maya recognized some of them from her debriefings: General Morrison from Defense, Dr. Elizabeth Santos from the Xenobiology Division, and someone she didn't recognize, a thin, nervous-looking man in an expensive suit who had the bearing of a politician. "Maya," General Morrison stood as they entered, "good to see you again. How are you adjusting to Earth gravity?" "It feels heavy," Maya admitted. "Most of the worlds I was stationed on had lower gravity than Earth. My body got used to it." Among other adjustments, Dr. Santos interjected, consulting a tablet. "Your bone density has increased by 40%, your muscle fiber composition has shifted to favor fast twitch responses, and your cardiovascular system now operates at an efficiency level that should be impossible for human physiology." The unknown man cleared his throat. "Ms. Chen, I'm Congressman Bradley from the House Committee on Extraterrestrial Affairs. We've been monitoring your situation with great interest." Maya's enhanced perception immediately flagged this man as a threat. His heart rate was elevated, his skin temperature suggested stress, and there was something in his electromagnetic signature that reminded her unpleasantly of the Dominion interrogators she'd encountered on Rigel 7. "What kind of interest, Congressman?" "The kind that keeps American citizens safe," Bradley replied smoothly. "You've been exposed to alien influences for 2 years. You've been physically and mentally altered by non-human technology. From a national security standpoint, we need to be absolutely certain that you're still loyal to humanity's interests." Maya felt the familiar surge of anger that had gotten her into trouble with commanding officers throughout the war. Her cybernetic implants automatically began cycling through combat protocols before she consciously shut them down. This wasn't a battlefield, and these weren't enemy combatants, no matter how hostile they seemed. "I've bled for humanity's interests," she said, her voice carefully controlled. "I've watched friends die defending human colonies. I've negotiated peace treaties that saved millions of human lives. If that doesn't prove my loyalty, I'm not sure what would." "We're not questioning your intentions," Walsh interjected diplomatically. "But we need to consider the practical implications of your return. You're not the same person who left Earth 2 years ago, Maya. The question is, how do we help you reintegrate into human society?" Dr. Santos pulled up a holographic display showing brain scans and biological readouts. "The neural pathways in your cerebral cortex have been completely rewired. The alien biotechnology has created new connections that shouldn't exist in human neurology. You're processing information at a rate that's beyond our current understanding of cognitive function." "Which brings us to our proposal," General Morrison said. "We'd like you to consider remaining with the GDI in an advisory capacity. Your unique experience and enhanced capabilities make you invaluable for future extraterrestrial contact scenarios." Maya had been dreading this moment. She'd known they wouldn't want to let her simply walk away and return to normal life. But she'd also known that staying with the military wasn't an option for her. She'd seen too much, done too much, lost too much to spend the rest of her life as a government asset. "I appreciate the offer," she said carefully, "but I need to try to reclaim some semblance of a normal life. I missed 2 years of high school. I never got to graduate with my class, never went to prom, never had a chance to just be a teenager." "Maya," Congressman Bradley leaned forward, "you're not a teenager anymore. You may be 17 chronologically, but you've experienced things that have aged you beyond your years. Trying to pretend otherwise could be dangerous." "Dangerous to whom?" Maya asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. To everyone around you, Bradley said bluntly. Your reaction times are superhuman. Your strength could easily injure or kill a normal person accidentally. Your enhanced senses mean you're constantly aware of things others aren't. How do you plan to sit in a classroom full of ordinary teenagers without feeling like you're surrounded by children? The question hit closer to home than Maya wanted to admit. During her brief medical leave on Centauri Station, she'd interacted with some civilian personnel and had been struck by how slow and limited they seemed. Their concerns felt trivial, their conversations mundane, their entire existence frustratingly small compared to the vast complexity of the galaxy she'd come to know. I'll learn to adapt, she said. I have to try. Dr. Santos shook her head. Maya, we've run psychological profiles based on similar cases from our archives. Enhanced individuals who attempt to return to their previous social environments typically experience severe depression, social isolation, and, in some cases, complete psychological breakdown. The gap between their capabilities and the limitations of their environment becomes unbearable. What are you suggesting? Maya asked, though she was beginning to understand that this conversation wasn't really about her choices at all. We're suggesting a compromise, Walsh said. You can return to civilian life, but with certain conditions. Regular psychological evaluations, monthly check-ins with our medical staff, and a monitoring system to ensure that you're not experiencing any adverse effects from your enhancements. You want to spy on me, Maya translated. We want to protect you, General Morrison corrected. And protect others from the potential consequences of your condition. Maya stood up, her enhanced musculature moving with a fluid grace that made several of the officials unconsciously lean back in their chairs. She'd forgotten how intimidating she could be to baseline humans when she wasn't actively trying to appear harmless. I understand your concerns, she said, but I'm not going to spend the rest of my life as a lab rat or a government asset. I've earned the right to make my own choices about my future. Have you? Congressman Bradley asked coldly. According to our legal analysis, your enhancements were performed using alien biotechnology without proper informed consent protocols. Technically, you could be classified as an experimental subject rather than a citizen with full legal rights. The threat was clear, and Maya felt her combat systems beginning to activate automatically. The room's electromagnetic profile shifted as her implants prepared for potential conflict, and she saw Dr. Santos glance nervously at her monitoring equipment. Congressman, General Morrison said warningly, that's not the approach we agreed on. Perhaps not, Bradley replied, but it's the reality of the situation. Ms. Chin is no longer legally human according to the Genetic Modification and Enhancement Act of 2157. Her citizenship status is, at best, ambiguous. Maya realized that this had been planned from the beginning. They'd never intended to simply let her return to civilian life. The enhancements that had saved her life and made her invaluable as a soldier had also made her a potential threat in their eyes, someone who needed to be controlled and contained. I see, she said quietly. So my options are to work for you voluntarily or be classified as a non-human entity with no legal rights. We're hoping it doesn't come to that, Walsh said, shooting an angry look at Bradley. But we need some kind of assurance that you'll remain cooperative with ongoing security protocols. Maya was quiet for a long moment, her enhanced mind running through dozens of scenarios and possibilities. She could fight, of course. Her enhanced capabilities meant she could probably neutralize everyone in this room before they could call for backup. But that would only prove their point about her being dangerous, and it would make her a fugitive from the only world she could call home. Alternatively, she could agree to their monitoring and try to find a way to work within their system. It wouldn't be true freedom, but it might be enough to allow her to build some kind of life for herself. Or she could choose the third option, the one that none of them were expecting. I'll make you a deal, she said finally. Give me 6 months to prove that I can successfully reintegrate into civilian society without causing problems. Let me finish high school, experience something approaching a normal teenage life, and demonstrate that my enhancements don't make me a threat to public safety. And if you can't? Dr. Santos asked. Then, I'll voluntarily return to GDI service, Maya said. But, if I can prove that I can live peacefully among baseline humans, you'll officially recognize my citizenship status and leave me alone. The officials exchanged glances. It wasn't what they'd wanted, but it was more than they'd expected to get from someone with Maya's capabilities and leverage. 6 months, Walsh said finally. With regular check-ins and monitoring. Minimal monitoring, Maya countered. I won't be effective at proving my point if I'm obviously under surveillance. Agreed, General Morrison said before Bradley could object. But, Maya, understand that we'll be watching. Any sign that you're becoming unstable or that your presence is causing problems, and the deal is off. Maya nodded. It wasn't perfect, but it was a chance. 6 months to prove that she could be both enhanced and human, both changed and familiar. 6 months to show them that the girl who'd saved the galaxy could also survive something as mundane as senior year of high school. As she left the spaceport and stepped into the Denver sunshine, Maya wondered if she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life. The stars had been dangerous, but, at least in space, she'd known who her enemies were. High school, she suspected, was going to be much more complicated. Her old neighborhood looked exactly the same as she remembered, right down to Mrs. Patterson's garden gnomes and the crack in the sidewalk where she'd learned to skateboard. But, as she walked toward her childhood home, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that she was the one who no longer fit. She'd changed in ways that went deeper than her physical enhancements, and she wasn't sure if coming home was going to heal those changes or make them worse. The front door of her house opened before she could knock, and her mother appeared, tears already streaming down her face. For a moment, all of Maya's enhanced perceptions and alien memories fell away, and she was just a 17-year-old girl who wanted her mom. Maya, her mother whispered, pulling her into a hug that smelled like home and felt like safety. My baby girl. You're finally home. But, as Maya hugged her mother back, she couldn't help but notice how fragile the older woman felt in her enhanced grip, how slow her heartbeat sounded, how limited her electromagnetic signature was compared to the complex beings Maya had grown accustomed to. Even in this moment of reunion, the gap between what she'd become and what she'd been was impossible to ignore. The real challenge, Maya realized, wasn't going to be proving to the government that she could live among baseline humans. It was going to be proving it to herself. Maya's first morning back at Jefferson High School felt like stepping into a museum exhibit titled Life Before the Stars. Everything was exactly as she remembered, the same faded blue lockers, the same motivational posters that had been there since she was a freshman, even the same broken drinking fountain by the main office that made a weird whistling sound when you pressed the button. She stood in the parking lot for a full minute, watching her former classmates stream through the front entrance. Her enhanced hearing picked up fragments of conversation about weekend parties, upcoming tests, and relationship drama that seemed impossibly trivial compared to the life and death decisions she'd been making for the past 2 years. A group of seniors walked past her, laughing about something on their phones, and Maya realized with a start that these were her peers, people she should theoretically have things in common with. The problem was that she didn't feel 17 anymore. She felt ancient. Maya Chen? Maya turned to find a tall, athletic boy with sandy brown hair staring at her with undisguised curiosity. It took her enhanced memory a moment to place him, Derek Martinez, who'd been in her chemistry class before she'd left Earth. He'd grown at least 6 inches and filled out considerably, though her enhanced perception immediately catalogued that he was still moving with the slightly awkward coordination of someone whose body had recently changed. Derek, hi, Maya said, forcing a smile that felt rusty from disuse. You got tall. Derek laughed, but there was something nervous in his expression. Yeah, well, you got famous. I mean, we heard about what happened out there. The whole school did. There was this assembly where they talked about you being humanity's youngest galactic hero or something. Maya's stomach tightened. She'd hoped her story hadn't become public knowledge, but she should have known better. News of humanity's first successful diplomatic contact with alien civilizations would have been impossible to keep secret, and her role in those events had apparently become part of the official narrative. It wasn't really like that, she said carefully. The media tends to exaggerate things. Still pretty cool though, Derek continued, though his voice carried an odd tone that Maya's enhanced perception identified as fear masquerading as admiration. I mean, you actually talked to aliens. And fought in space battles. That's like something out of a movie. Yeah, Maya said, not trusting herself to say more. How could she explain that the reality had been messier, more terrifying, and more morally complex than any movie would ever show. How could she describe watching her friends die in the vacuum of space, or the weight of making decisions that affected entire species, or the nightmares that still woke her up screaming about the things she'd had to do to survive? The warning bell rang, and Derek gestured toward the school entrance. "Come on, I'll walk you to the office. You probably need to check in with administration, right?" As they walked through the hallways, Maya became increasingly aware of the stares and whispers following in her wake. Her enhanced hearing caught fragments of conversation from every direction. "That's her, the space girl. I heard she's not even human anymore. My dad says the government's watching her. She looks different, doesn't she?" They weren't wrong. Maya had tried to dress as normally as possible: jeans, sneakers, a simple sweater, but there were changes that couldn't be hidden. Her posture was different, more controlled and aware than a typical teenager's. Her movements had an economy and precision that spoke of combat training. Most tellingly, her eyes moved constantly, automatically scanning for threats and analyzing her environment in a way that made her seem perpetually alert and slightly dangerous. The administrative office was a relief from the staring crowds. Mrs. Henderson, the school secretary, looked up from her computer with an expression of professional warmth that Maya remembered from her earlier years at Jefferson. "Maya Chen," Mrs. Henderson said, rising from her desk. "Welcome back, dear. We're all so proud of what you've accomplished." "Thank you," Maya replied, though she wasn't entirely sure what she was being thanked for. Surviving? Killing enemy soldiers? Preventing a war that would have cost millions of lives? The complexity of her experiences didn't translate well to simple gratitude. "Principal Rodriguez wanted to meet with you personally," Mrs. Henderson continued, pressing a button on her intercom. "He's very excited to have you back at Jefferson." Principal Rodriguez emerged from his office with the kind of broad smile that politicians wore when meeting constituents. Maya's enhanced perception immediately tagged him as someone trying too hard to appear relaxed and friendly. His elevated heart rate and stress hormones suggested he was as nervous about this meeting as she was. "Maya," Rodriguez said, extending his hand. "This is truly an honor. When we heard you were returning to complete your education here, the entire staff was thrilled." Maya shook his hand carefully, conscious of her enhanced strength. Even the simple act of a handshake required conscious control now, too light and, it seemed dismissive, too firm and, she risked injuring someone. It was one of dozens of small calculations she had to make in every social interaction. "I appreciate everyone being so welcoming," Maya said. "I know this is an unusual situation." "Unusual but not unprecedented," Rodriguez assured her, though his tone suggested he was trying to convince himself as much as her. "We've had other students return from extended absences. Military families, exchange students, medical situations. We pride ourselves on helping all our students succeed, regardless of their unique circumstances." Maya nodded, though she doubted any of those other students had returned with alien biotechnology integrated into their nervous systems and memories of battles fought light years from Earth. Rodriguez led her into his office, where a guidance counselor was waiting with a stack of paperwork and assessment materials. Dr. Patricia Voss was a woman in her 50s with graying hair and the kind of patient expression that came from decades of dealing with teenage problems. She looked at Maya with professional curiosity but without the fear or excessive admiration Maya had been seeing in most people's faces. "Maya," Dr. Voss said warmly, "I'm going to be working with you to get you caught up academically and help you readjust to school life. I understand you've been through some extraordinary experiences, but our goal is to help you have as normal a senior year as possible." "Normal," Maya repeated, tasting the word. "I'm not sure I remember what that feels like anymore." Dr. Voss smiled. "That's actually more common than you might think. Many students who've had significant life experiences struggle with readjustment. The key is taking things one day at a time and not putting too much pressure on yourself to immediately fit back into patterns that may no longer serve you." It was the first thing anyone had said that actually made sense to Maya. Dr. Voss seemed to understand that change wasn't necessarily something to be feared or overcome, but rather something to be acknowledged and worked with. "We've looked at your academic records from before you left," Dr. Voss continued, consulting her files. "You were a strong student, mostly A's and B's, particularly in sciences and mathematics. However, you've missed significant portions of your junior and senior year curricula.
How far behind am I?
Maya asked, though she suspected her enhanced cognitive abilities would make catching up easier than it would be for most students. In terms of raw content, quite a bit, Rodriguez admitted. However, we've had discussions with some very interesting federal education specialists who seem to think your experiences may have given you educational credits that could offset some of those deficits.
Maya raised an eyebrow. Federal education specialists? Representatives from the Department of Education's Exceptional Circumstances Division, Dr. Voss explained.
They've developed protocols for evaluating experiential learning in non-traditional contexts. Apparently, your diplomatic and technical training during your off-world service qualifies for advanced placement credits in several subjects. Maya realized that the government was still trying to manage her transition, just more subtly than she'd expected. By providing academic accommodations, they were helping to smooth her reintegration while also keeping tabs on her progress. It was manipulation, but it was relatively benign manipulation that actually served her interests. What subjects would I still need to complete, she asked. Dr. Voss consulted her chart.
English literature, world history, and, interestingly enough, biology. Apparently your enhanced physiology means we need to recalibrate how you approach human biological systems. The irony wasn't lost on Maya. She'd interfaced with alien biotechnology sophisticated enough to rewrite her entire genetic structure, but she still needed to learn about mitosis and the Krebs cycle from a textbook designed for baseline human teenagers. There's also the question of your social reintegration, Dr. Voss said gently. You've been away during some critical developmental years. Your peers have been forming relationships, developing interests, and navigating typical teenage social dynamics while you've been dealing with much more adult responsibilities. I've noticed, Maya said dryly, thinking of Derek's nervous curiosity and the whispered conversations she'd overheard in the hallway.
We want to help you find ways to connect with your classmates, Dr. Voss continued.
Are there any extracurricular activities you might be interested in? Clubs, sports, volunteer opportunities? Maya considered this.
Her enhanced physical capabilities would make most sports unfairly easy, and her experiences had given her perspectives that would probably be difficult to relate to in typical high school clubs. But maybe there were ways to bridge that gap. I might be interested in the debate team, she said thoughtfully. Or maybe something involving community service.
Excellent choices, Rodriguez said enthusiastically.
Both of those activities emphasize skills that would clearly be strengths for you: the communication, critical thinking, civic engagement.
A knock on the office door interrupted their conversation.
Mrs. Henderson poked her head in with an apologetic expression. I'm sorry to interrupt, but there are some reporters outside asking about Maya.
Should I tell them she's not available for comment? Maya felt her enhanced senses automatically shift into threat assessment mode. Reporters meant publicity, which meant attention, which meant complications for her efforts to blend back into normal life.
How did they know I was here, she asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Rodriguez looked uncomfortable.
Word travels fast in a community like this.
And your return has been anticipated by various groups.
What kind of groups?
Maya asked, her enhanced hearing picking up the sound of multiple vehicles in the school parking lot and the electromagnetic signatures of recording equipment. Dr. Voss and Rodriguez exchanged a glance that Maya's enhanced perception read as concern mixed with resignation. There's been quite a bit of interest in your story, Dr. Voss said carefully. Human rights organizations, military advocacy groups, religious groups who see theological implications in humanity's contact with alien civilizations, and, unfortunately, some fringe groups who have less positive views about human enhancement and extraterrestrial contact.
Maya realized that her 6-month trial period was going to be more complicated than she'd anticipated.
It wasn't just about proving she could live peacefully among baseline humans, it was about doing so while under scrutiny from multiple groups with their own agendas regarding her existence. What do you recommend? She asked. For now, we're going to have you use the staff entrance for the rest of the week, Rodriguez said. Mrs. Henderson has contacted the local police, and they'll make sure the reporters stay off school property. In the long term, though, you're going to need to develop strategies for handling public attention.
Maya nodded, though internally she was calculating the defensive capabilities of the school building and identifying potential exit routes.
Old habits from her time as a soldier were hard to break, and the combination of reporters and unknown groups with less positive views about her existence was triggering every threat assessment protocol in her enhanced mind.
Maya, Dr. Voss said gently, apparently noticing her change in demeanor, are you all right?
Maya forced herself to relax, consciously dialing back her enhanced awareness to something approaching normal human levels.
Just adjusting to the attention. I'm used to being able to blend in when I need to.
Unfortunately, that's going to be challenging for a while, Rodriguez admitted. Your story has captured public imagination in ways that we're still trying to understand. You represent something new in human experience, direct contact with alien civilizations, successful diplomacy where military force failed, and physical enhancement that pushes the boundaries of what we consider human. I'm still just trying to graduate high school, Maya said, and was surprised to hear the frustration in her own voice. And we're going to help you do exactly that, Dr. Voss assured her. But we also need to be realistic about the fact that your high school experience is going to be different from your classmates. The question is whether we can make it different in positive ways rather than just challenging ones. Maya spent the rest of the morning meeting with teachers, receiving textbooks, and touring facilities that felt both familiar and strange after her time away. Her enhanced memory allowed her to notice every small change, new motivational posters, updated technology in the computer lab, even different brands of hand soap in the bathrooms. The details would have been invisible to baseline human perception, but, for Maya, they created a constant sense of displacement, as if she were visiting a place that was almost, but not quite, the way she remembered. Her first actual class was AP English Literature with Ms. Patricia Wong, a teacher Maya remembered as being both demanding and fair. The classroom fell silent when Maya entered, 23 pairs of eyes tracking her movement to an empty desk in the back row. Maya's enhanced hearing picked up elevated heart rates throughout the room and the subtle shift in electromagnetic signatures that indicated heightened emotional states.
Class, Ms. Wong said calmly, I'd like to welcome back Maya-chan, who's rejoining us for the second semester.
Maya, we're currently working on a unit about heroic narratives in world literature. I think your perspectives on the topic might be particularly valuable. Maya felt her stomach clench. Of all the subjects to be studying, heroic narratives felt like the most loaded possible choice. She'd been called a hero by the media, by politicians, by military officials, but the reality of her experiences felt far more complicated than any literary archetype could capture. Today we're discussing whether true heroism requires personal sacrifice, Ms. Wong continued, apparently oblivious to Maya's discomfort.
We've been analyzing passages from various epic traditions, Gilgamesh, the Iliad, Beowulf, the Mahabharata.
The question is whether heroes are defined by what they gain or what they lose in their journeys. A girl Maya didn't recognize raised her hand.
Ms. Wong, shouldn't we ask Maya about this? I mean, she's actually been a hero in real life.
Maya felt every pair of eyes in the classroom turn toward her, and her enhanced senses picked up the complex mixture of curiosity, admiration, fear, and resentment in her classmates' emotional signatures. She realized that this was going to be her reality for the foreseeable future, being treated as a living example rather than just another student. I'm not sure I'm qualified to speak about heroism, Maya said carefully. I mostly just tried to survive situations that were beyond my control.
But, you saved entire colonies, another student pressed. That's definitely heroic. And, you talked to aliens, added someone else. You literally changed human history.
Maya felt her enhanced systems beginning to react to the stress of being the center of attention. Her heart rate was increasing, her sensory awareness was expanding automatically, and she could feel her combat protocols beginning to activate. She forced herself to breathe slowly and consciously dial back her enhancements. Literature class isn't really about my personal experiences, she said, trying to redirect the conversation. It's about understanding how different cultures have conceptualized heroism throughout history. Ms. Wong, apparently sensing Maya's discomfort, smoothly guided the discussion back to the assigned reading materials. But Maya could feel the weight of continued attention from her classmates, and she realized that her hope of blending back into normal student life was going to be much more difficult than she'd anticipated. When the class ended, Maya was surrounded by students wanting to ask questions, get her autograph, or simply satisfy their curiosity about what she'd experienced. Her enhanced senses were overwhelmed by the proximity of so many people, all of whom were excited and emotional in ways that created a chaotic sensory environment.
Maya, someone called out as she tried to navigate toward the door, is it true that you can actually talk to alien minds directly? Did you really kill 1,000 enemy soldiers? Asked someone else. What do aliens look like? Are they scary? Is it true that you're not totally human anymore?
The questions felt like attacks, each one requiring her to relive experiences she was still trying to process. Maya's enhanced mind began calculating the most efficient path to the exit, automatically identifying potential obstacles and threats in the crowd of eager teenagers. For a moment, she almost activated her combat enhancements to simply push through the crowd. Instead, she stopped and forced herself to speak calmly. I know everyone's curious, but I'm really just here to be a normal student and finish high school.
Maybe we could talk about something else? The crowd gradually dispersed, though Maya could feel the disappointment in her classmates' emotional signatures.
She'd failed their expectations of what a returning galactic hero should be like: more accessible, more willing to share dramatic stories, more comfortable with the attention. As she walked to her next class, Maya realized that her biggest challenge wasn't going to be catching up academically or proving to the government that she could control her enhancements. It was going to be finding a way to exist in a world where everyone wanted her to be either more or less than what she'd become. The girl who'd left Earth 2 years ago had been anonymous, ordinary, unremarkable. The person who'd returned was enhanced, experienced, and fundamentally changed in ways that couldn't be hidden or ignored. Finding a middle ground between those two identities was going to require skills that no amount of alien technology or military training had prepared her for. Maya took a deep breath and walked into her next class, wondering if 6 months would be enough time to figure out how to be both extraordinary and normal at the same time. 3 weeks into her return to Jefferson High, Maya had settled into what she optimistically called a routine, though it bore little resemblance to any normal teenage schedule. She woke up at 0500 hours, a habit from her military service that her enhanced physiology seemed incapable of breaking, and spent an hour in meditation, consciously adjusting her sensory filters and emotional responses for the day ahead. By the time most of her classmates were struggling out of bed, Maya had already completed what would have been a full day's worth of studying for a baseline human. The enhanced cognitive processing that made academic work almost trivially easy also made the social aspects of high school exponentially more complex. Maya could analyze the micro-expressions and vocal patterns of everyone around her, reading emotional states and intentions with uncomfortable accuracy. She knew when her lab partner in chemistry was lying about having done the homework, when her history teacher was having marital problems based on subtle changes in his stress hormones, and when the group of girls who'd once been her friends were talking about her just out of normal human hearing range. The isolation was profound in ways she hadn't anticipated. It wasn't just that she'd changed, it was that she could see how different she'd become reflected in everyone else's response to her presence. Her enhanced senses meant she was constantly aware of the elevated heart rates, stress responses, and electromagnetic signatures of anxiety that surrounded her wherever she went. Even people who were trying to be welcoming couldn't completely mask their discomfort with what she'd become. Maya was eating lunch alone in the library when her enhanced hearing picked up a conversation taking place 3 tables away. 2 girls she vaguely remembered from her freshman year were speaking in what they thought were whispers. I heard she doesn't even need to sleep anymore, one was saying. My cousin's friend works at the military base, and he said they did all kinds of experiments on her. That's nothing, the other replied. Jenny's mom is a nurse at Denver General, and she heard that Maya's not even technically human anymore. Like, legally. The government classifies her as something else. That's creepy. I mean, she looks normal mostly, but there's something wrong with her eyes. They're too alert, you know? Like she's always watching everything. Maya closed her textbook and moved to a different section of the library, but her enhanced hearing continued to pick up fragments of similar conversations throughout the afternoon. The stories about her were growing more elaborate and less accurate with each retelling, creating a mythology around her presence that bore only passing resemblance to reality. After school, Maya walked to Washington Park, the same place where she'd learned to ride a bike and spent countless afternoons in what now felt like a previous lifetime. The park was mostly empty on a cold February afternoon, which made it easier for her to dial down her sensory filters and enjoy something approaching peace. She was sitting on a bench near the duck pond when her enhanced hearing detected someone approaching from behind. Maya's combat training kicked in automatically, cataloging the person's gait pattern, approximate mass, and probable intentions based on their movement characteristics. She forced herself not to turn around or shift into a defensive posture, though her enhanced nervous system was already preparing for potential conflict.
You know, most people can't hear someone coming from that far away.
Maya turned to see a girl about her own age with short black hair and intelligent dark eyes. Unlike most of her classmates, this person's emotional signature read as curious rather than fearful or overly excited. Maya's enhanced memory provided a name, Alex Reyes, 1 year younger, known for being in advanced mathematics and computer programming courses. Most people make more noise than they realize, Maya replied carefully. Alex sat down on the other end of the bench without being invited, which was either very brave or very foolish depending on how much she knew about Maya's enhanced capabilities. I've been wanting to talk to you for weeks, but you're always surrounded by people asking stupid questions or treating you like some kind of celebrity freak show.
And you're different? Maya asked.
I'm not interested in war stories or alien gossip, Alex said bluntly.
I'm interested in the technical aspects of what happened to you.
Maya's enhanced perception immediately flagged this as both potentially dangerous and potentially refreshing. Most people wanted to hear about the dramatic aspects of her experiences, the battles, the alien encounters, the heroic narrative that the media had constructed around her story. Alex was the first person to express interest in the more complex reality of her transformation.
What kind of technical aspects? Maya asked cautiously.
The integration problems, Alex said, pulling out a tablet and showing Maya what appeared to be advanced mathematical equations.
I've been following the academic papers about human-alien biotechnology interfaces.
The energy requirements alone should have killed you during the initial enhancement process, but obviously something solved that problem.
Maya stared at the equations, recognizing some of the theoretical frameworks that the Nexari engineers had used during her transformation. How do you know about any of this?
I've been accepted to MIT for next year, early admission to their xenotechnology program, Alex explained. My senior project is on the theoretical implications of human enhancement using non-terrestrial biotechnology. Your case is literally the only successful example in human history. For the first time since returning to Earth, Maya found herself talking to someone who understood the complexity of her situation from a technical rather than dramatic perspective. Alex's questions were precise and informed, focusing on the practical challenges of integrating alien biotechnology with human neurology rather than the more sensational aspects of her story. The really interesting part, Alex continued, is that according to the published data, your enhancements aren't just additive. They've actually optimized your existing human systems in ways that shouldn't be possible without completely rewriting your genetic code. The Nexari don't think in terms of replacement, Maya explained, finding herself relaxing into a conversation that felt intellectually stimulating rather than emotionally draining. Their biotechnology is designed to enhance and optimize rather than override existing biological systems.
Which is why you're still recognizably human despite having capabilities that are beyond baseline human parameters, Alex nodded. But it also means you're probably dealing with integration challenges that most people don't understand. Maya was impressed.
Alex had identified the core issue that Maya had been struggling with for months, the fact that her enhancements had made her more than human without making her less human, creating a complex identity that didn't fit into existing categories.
What kind of integration challenges? Maya asked, curious to hear an outside perspective on her situation. Social integration, obviously, Alex said. But also psychological integration.
Your enhanced cognitive processing means you're aware of social dynamics and information that baseline humans miss entirely. That has to create a sense of isolation and probably some level of existential confusion about your place in human society.
Maya felt something she hadn't experienced since returning to Earth, understanding.
Alex wasn't trying to treat her as a hero or a freak or a potential threat. She was approaching Maya's situation as a complex technical and social problem that deserves serious analysis. You're the first person who's talked about this like it's a real problem rather than just something cool or scary, Maya admitted.
Because it is a real problem, Alex replied.
And it's going to get worse if you don't find ways to address the integration issues proactively. They talked for another hour, discussing everything from the theoretical limits of human enhancement to the social psychology of interacting with beings who had fundamentally different capabilities than baseline humans. Alex's perspective was refreshingly analytical, and her questions helped Maya articulate feelings and experiences she'd been struggling to understand. When they finally parted ways, Maya felt more hopeful about her reintegration than she had since returning to Earth. Maybe there were ways to bridge the gap between what she'd become and the world she was trying to rejoin. That optimism lasted until she arrived at school the next morning and discovered that someone had spray-painted "Alien Lover" across her locker in red letters that were visible from halfway down the hallway. Maya's enhanced senses immediately detected the elevated stress levels and mixed emotional signatures of everyone in the corridor, some shocked, some angry, some secretly pleased that someone had finally expressed what they'd been thinking. Maya stood in front of her defaced locker for a long moment, her enhanced mind calculating responses and implications. She could identify the person responsible based on paint residue and electromagnetic traces, but that would require revealing capabilities that might make her integration even more difficult. She could report it to school administration, but that would create more attention and potentially more problems. Instead, she quietly got cleaning supplies from the janitor's closet and spent her lunch period scrubbing the paint off her locker. The work gave her time to think about what this incident meant for her 6-month trial period. Someone at Jefferson High saw her presence as threatening enough to engage in anonymous harassment. That suggested that the integration challenges Alex had mentioned were more serious than Maya had realized. It also meant that her efforts to blend in and prove her harmlessness were failing in ways that could have broader implications. Dr. Voss found Maya in the hallway after school, still working on removing the last traces of paint from her locker. "Maya," Dr. Voss said gently, "I heard about what happened. Are you all right?" "I'm fine," Maya replied, though her enhanced perception detected the concern in Dr. Voss's emotional signature. "It's just paint." "It's harassment," Dr. Voss corrected. "And it's not acceptable. We're reviewing security footage to identify who was responsible." Maya nodded, though she wondered if finding the culprit would actually improve her situation or just create more problems. "Dr. Voss, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you think this was inevitable?" Maya asked. "I mean, was there any realistic scenario where I could have come back here and just been a normal student?" Dr. Voss was quiet for a moment, considering her answer carefully. "Maya, I think what you're attempting is extraordinarily difficult. You're trying to return to a social environment that you've outgrown in fundamental ways, while also trying to prove that your changes don't make you a threat to that environment. That's not really an answer to my question. The honest answer," Dr. Voss said, "is that I don't know. What you're trying to do has never been attempted before. But I do know that giving up after 3 weeks because of one incident of vandalism would be premature." Maya finished cleaning her locker and gathered her books. "Dr. Voss, what happens if this doesn't work? If I can't prove that I can integrate back into normal human society?" "Then, you'll have to find other ways to build a meaningful life," Dr. Voss replied. "But, Maya, success doesn't necessarily mean becoming invisible or unremarkable. It might mean finding ways to use your unique perspective and capabilities to contribute positively to your community." That evening, Maya sat in her childhood bedroom, surrounded by posters and mementos from a life that felt increasingly distant and irrelevant. Her enhanced senses picked up her parents' worried conversation downstairs, their stress hormones indicating ongoing concern about her adjustment and future prospects. She was reviewing her chemistry homework when her enhanced hearing detected a subtle electronic signal coming from outside her house. Maya's combat training immediately identified it as some form of surveillance equipment, probably government monitoring designed to track her activities and ensure she wasn't becoming a security risk. Maya realized that even her private time wasn't really private anymore. The government agents who'd agreed to her 6-month trial were keeping watch, waiting to see if she would fulfill their expectations or confirm their fears about enhanced humans being unable to successfully reintegrate into baseline society. The surveillance also meant that incidents like the locker vandalism were being recorded and analyzed by people who would interpret them as evidence of social integration failure rather than normal teenage stupidity amplified by fear and ignorance. Maya activated her enhanced hearing and carefully mapped the surveillance network around her house. 3 vehicles, multiple electronic monitoring devices, and at least one human observer positioned to maintain visual contact with her residence. The level of scrutiny suggested that her handlers were more concerned about her potential for causing problems than they'd admitted during their initial negotiations. She was considering the implications of this discovery when her enhanced senses detected another signal, this one much more subtle and, using technology that she recognized as non-terrestrial in origin. Maya's enhanced nervous system interfaced automatically with the alien communication protocol, decoding a message that made her enhanced heart rate spike with alarm. The message was brief and, encoded in Nexari technical language, dimensional breach detected.
Ancient threat awakening. Your world in danger. Trust no one. We cannot intervene directly. You must prepare.
Maya stared at the decoded message, her enhanced mind rapidly processing the implications. The Nexari were her allies, the species that had saved her life and provided her enhancements. If they were warning her about an ancient threat, it meant something was happening that went far beyond her personal integration challenges. But the message had also said to trust no one, which meant that the government agents monitoring her might not be allies in whatever was coming. Maya realized that her 6-month trial period might be about to become irrelevant in the face of a much larger threat. She spent the rest of the night using her enhanced capabilities to research everything she could find about recent unusual phenomena, government cover-ups, and anything that might relate to the ancient threat the Nexari had warned her about. What she discovered made her enhanced blood run cold. Students had been disappearing from schools across the country, not just absent or dropping out, but completely vanishing without explanation. The disappearances were being covered up by local authorities, but Maya's enhanced analytical capabilities allowed her to identify patterns that baseline human investigators had missed.
All of the missing students had been in advanced academic programs.
All had shown unusual aptitude in specific areas: mathematics, linguistics, pattern recognition, or theoretical physics. And all had disappeared from schools that were located near sites of historical significance or unusual geological formations. Maya realized that Jefferson High School, built on land that had once been sacred to local indigenous peoples and situated near unusual mineral deposits that had puzzled geologists for decades, fit the pattern perfectly.
Whatever ancient threat the Nexari were warning her about, it was already active on Earth. And Maya's high school was apparently ground zero for its activities.
The girl who'd returned from the battlefield to face the challenges of teenage reintegration was about to discover that high school really could be hell, literally. Maya's enhanced senses detected the anomaly before her conscious mind had fully processed what she was seeing. The hallways of Jefferson High looked normal at 0700 hours on Tuesday morning, same faded lockers, same institutional lighting, same smell of industrial disinfectant mixed with teenage anxiety. But something fundamental had changed overnight. The electromagnetic signatures were wrong. Every electronic device in the building was operating at slightly altered frequencies, creating a subtle harmonic that made Maya's enhanced nervous system feel like it was constantly trying to tune into a signal that wasn't quite there. More disturbing was what her enhanced perception wasn't detecting: the normal biological signatures of approximately 40 students who should have been present but were simply gone. Maya stood at the main entrance, using her enhanced cognitive processing to analyze the attendance patterns from the past month. The missing students weren't random, they formed a specific profile that aligned perfectly with the pattern she'd identified in her research. Advanced placement students, honor roll achievers, kids who'd shown exceptional aptitude in subjects that required pattern recognition and abstract thinking.
Maya? She turned to find Alex Reyes approaching, though Alex's electromagnetic signature was subtly different from what Maya remembered.
There was an underlying resonance that hadn't been there before, something that made Maya's enhanced systems flag Alex as potentially dangerous despite her familiar appearance.
"Alex," Maya said carefully, "how are you feeling this morning?"
"Strange question," Alex replied, but her voice carried microtonal variations that Maya's enhanced hearing identified as artificially modulated.
"Why would you ask that?" Maya's combat protocols began activating automatically.
Whatever was happening at Jefferson High, Alex was either part of it or had been affected by it. Maya forced herself to maintain a casual demeanor while her enhanced senses mapped potential threats and escape routes.
"You just seem different," Maya said. "Did you sleep well last night?"
Alex smiled, but the expression didn't quite reach her eyes.
"I slept very well." Better than I have in years, actually.
I had the most interesting dreams about patterns and connections and the way information flows through complex systems.
Maya's enhanced memory immediately flagged this as significant.
Alex's senior project had focused on xenotechnology integration, exactly the kind of advanced theoretical work that might make her valuable to whatever force was affecting the school.
That sounds fascinating, Maya said. Maybe we could talk about it later?
Oh, I think we'll have plenty of time to talk, Alex replied, and there was something in her tone that made Maya's enhanced nervous system spike with alarm.
In fact, I think you're going to find today very educational.
Maya watched Alex walk away, noting the subtle changes in her gait pattern and posture. Whatever had happened to Alex overnight, it had altered her movement patterns in ways that suggested either external control or fundamental changes to her nervous system. The first period bell rang, and Maya made her way to AP English Literature, her enhanced senses on high alert. The classroom felt wrong the moment she entered. Too many empty desks, too much space where students should have been. Ms. Wong stood at the front of the room with the same artificially pleasant expression that Alex had displayed.
Class, Ms. Wong announced, today we're going to be discussing a very special topic. We're going to talk about the role of sacrifice in achieving transcendence. Maya's enhanced hearing detected subtle harmonic frequencies in Ms. Wong's voice that matched the electromagnetic anomalies she'd been sensing throughout the building.
Whatever was affecting people at Jefferson High was using some form of advanced technology to control or influence their behavior.
Maya, Ms. Wong continued, since you've had such unique experiences with transcendence, perhaps you'd like to share your thoughts on the subject?
Maya realized that she was being tested. The entity or force that had taken control of Jefferson High wanted to know how much she understood about what was happening and whether her enhancements would make her resistant to whatever process had affected the others.
I'm not sure I understand what you mean by transcendence, Maya said carefully.
Oh, I think you understand perfectly, Ms. Wong replied.
You've experienced transformation beyond normal human limitations.
You've interfaced with technologies and consciousnesses that exist beyond the boundaries of baseline human experience.
You've transcended your original nature to become something new and more capable.
Maya's enhanced cognitive processing identified dozens of possible response strategies, but all of them carried significant risks. If she revealed too much knowledge, she might trigger whatever process had affected her classmates and teacher. If she revealed too little, she might miss an opportunity to gather critical information.
Transformation isn't always voluntary, Maya said finally. Sometimes it's something that happens to you rather than something you choose. Ms. Wong smiled, and Maya's enhanced vision detected micro-expressions that suggested satisfaction with her response.
Very true. But the most profound transformations often require us to surrender our attachment to what we were in order to embrace what we can become. The conversation felt like a philosophical trap designed to lead Maya toward accepting whatever process had changed the others. Maya's enhanced senses detected increasing electromagnetic activity throughout the building, as if her presence was triggering some kind of larger response.
Ms. Wong, Maya said, where are the students who were here yesterday?
They've moved on to the next phase of their development, Ms. Wong replied without hesitation.
They've embraced opportunities for growth that most humans never encounter.
Maya felt her enhanced combat systems preparing for action. The casual way Ms. Wong discussed the missing students suggested that whatever had happened to them might not be reversible.
Maya's 6-month trial period had just become a matter of survival rather than social integration.
I need to use the restroom, Maya said, standing up slowly.
Of course, Ms. Wong agreed. But, Maya? Don't take too long. We have so much to discuss.
Maya left the classroom and immediately activated her enhanced sensory capabilities to their maximum settings. The building was alive with electromagnetic activity that formed complex patterns throughout the structure.
Whatever technology was being used, it was far more sophisticated than anything in Earth's current technological arsenal.
Her enhanced hearing detected movement in the basement levels of the school, areas that officially didn't exist according to the building plans Maya had memorized during her security assessment of the campus. She also detected multiple human heartbeats in those lower areas, though the rhythmic patterns suggested that the people were either unconscious or in some form of induced altered state. Maya needed to gather more information, but she also needed to contact the outside world and warn someone about what was happening at Jefferson High. The problem was that the government agents monitoring her might be compromised, and she had no way of knowing who could be trusted. She was considering her options when her enhanced senses detected someone approaching from behind with the purposeful movement pattern of a trained combatant. Maya spun around to find herself facing Derek Martinez, though like the others, his electromagnetic signature had been altered in subtle but significant ways.
"Maya," Derek said, "you look concerned. Is everything all right?"
"Everything's fine," Maya replied, though her enhanced perception was cataloging Derek's improved posture, enhanced muscle tone, and the subtle changes in his neural activity patterns that suggested technological augmentation.
"I don't think it is," Derek said.
"I think you're beginning to understand what's really happening here, and that's making you nervous." Maya realized that Derek was no longer the awkward teenager she'd known before leaving Earth. Whatever process had affected him had enhanced his capabilities in ways that made him a potential threat even to someone with her advanced training.
"What is happening here, Derek?" Maya asked directly.
"Evolution," Derek replied.
"The next stage of human development.
The integration of consciousness with technologies that can expand our potential beyond anything baseline humanity has ever imagined." Maya's enhanced cognitive processing immediately identified this as describing some form of technological assimilation process.
The missing students hadn't been killed, they'd been transformed into something else, probably as part of some larger plan or agenda. "And what if someone doesn't want to evolve?" Maya asked. Derek's smile was patient and slightly condescending.
"Maya, you of all people should understand that evolution isn't optional.
You've already been transformed by alien technology. You've already transcended baseline human limitations. We're simply offering that same opportunity to everyone."
"The Nexary technology was designed to enhance rather than replace," Maya said.
"What you're describing sounds more like assimilation."
"Semantics," Derek replied. "The end result is the same: humans with capabilities that exceed their original biological limitations." Maya realized that whoever was behind this process had studied her enhancements and was using her transformation as a justification for their own agenda. They were presenting technological assimilation as the logical next step in human evolution, using her success as proof that such changes were beneficial.
"Who's running this?" Maya asked.
"Someone who understands that humanity's future lies in transcending the limitations of biological existence," Derek replied.
"Someone who has access to technologies that make even your Nexary enhancements seem primitive."
Maya's enhanced senses detected increasing electromagnetic activity throughout the building, and she realized that her conversation with Derek was being monitored by whatever intelligence was coordinating these transformations. Every question she asked was providing information about her capabilities and knowledge to an entity that might be planning to either recruit or eliminate her.
"I need to think about this," Maya said.
"Of course," Derek agreed.
"But, Maya? Don't think too long. The transformation process is much easier when it's voluntary."
Maya spent the rest of the morning moving through the school, using her enhanced capabilities to map the full extent of the electromagnetic anomalies and identify the locations of the missing students. What she discovered was both fascinating and terrifying. The missing students were alive but in some form of technologically induced stasis in the basement levels of the school. Their biological signatures indicated that they were undergoing systematic neurological modifications using technology that was far more advanced than anything Maya had encountered during her time with the Galactic Defense Initiative. More disturbing was the discovery that similar electromagnetic signatures were present at dozens of other locations across the country, all corresponding to schools where students had been reported missing.
This wasn't an isolated incident, it was part of a coordinated global operation to identify and transform humans with specific intellectual capabilities. Maya realized that the ancient threat the Nexary had warned her about wasn't some external invasion force.
It was something that had been dormant on Earth for an unknown period and was now using human institutions to identify and recruit candidates for transformation. During lunch period, Maya used her enhanced hearing to eavesdrop on conversations throughout the school. The pattern was consistent: students and staff who had been affected by the transformation process were discussing philosophical concepts about evolution, transcendence, and the limitations of baseline human existence.
They were being prepared for something, though Maya couldn't yet determine what the ultimate goal might be.
She was analyzing data when Alex approached her again, this time accompanied by 3 other students Maya recognized as being among the most academically advanced in the school. "Maya," Alex said, "we've been talking, and we think you're ready to learn more about what's really happening here." "I'm listening," Maya replied, though her enhanced combat systems were preparing for potential conflict. "Come with us," Alex said. "There's someone who wants to meet you. Someone who can explain everything and help you understand your role in humanity's future." Maya realized that this was the moment she'd been building toward since discovering the electromagnetic anomalies. Whatever intelligence was behind the transformation process wanted to recruit her directly, probably because her existing enhancements made her valuable in ways that baseline humans weren't. "All right," Maya said. "Lead the way." Alex and the other students led Maya through corridors that her enhanced mapping capabilities identified as routes toward the basement levels where she'd detected the missing students. As they walked, Maya used her enhanced senses to gather as much information as possible about the technology being used and the scope of the operation. They descended through stairwells that shouldn't have existed according to the official building plans, past walls lined with technology that Maya's enhanced nervous system recognized as having similarities to both Nexury biotechnology and something else, something older and more sophisticated than anything she'd encountered during her time in space. At the deepest level of the complex, they entered a vast chamber that extended far beyond the footprint of the school building above. The space was filled with rows of transparent cylinders containing the missing students, all of them suspended in some form of technologically maintained stasis while complex machinery interfaced with their neural systems. At the center of the chamber stood a figure that Maya's enhanced senses immediately identified as not entirely human, despite its human appearance. The electromagnetic signature was wrong, the biological patterns were subtly altered, and there was an underlying resonance that made Maya's enhanced nervous system recoil instinctively. "Maya Chen," the figure said, and its voice carried harmonic frequencies that seemed designed to induce specific neurological responses. "Welcome. I've been looking forward to meeting humanity's first successful integration with advanced alien biotechnology." Maya realized that she was facing the intelligence behind the transformation process, and that everything that had happened since her return to Jefferson High had been designed to bring her to this moment. The question was whether she was here as a potential recruit or as a threat to be eliminated. "I understand you have questions," the figure continued. "I'm prepared to provide answers. But first, let me show you what we're really trying to accomplish." The chamber filled with holographic displays showing star maps, technological schematics, and images of civilizations Maya didn't recognize. As she watched, Maya began to understand the scope of what she was dealing with and why the Nexury had warned her that her world was in danger. The holographic displays surrounding Maya revealed a truth that her enhanced mind processed with growing horror. The star maps showed invasion routes across dozens of galaxy clusters, the technological schematics depicted world harvesting equipment on scales that dwarfed planetary systems, and the images of civilizations showed species after species that had been systematically transformed, absorbed, and ultimately consumed by the intelligence standing before her. "Beautiful, isn't it?" the figure said, gesturing to the displays with hands that Maya's enhanced vision revealed to be composed of some form of adaptive nanotechnology rather than biological tissue. 10 million years of evolution, growth, and integration across countless worlds and species. Maya's enhanced cognitive processing immediately began analyzing everything she was seeing, cross-referencing it with intelligence databases from her time with the Galactic Defense Initiative. What she was looking at was evidence of a galactic-scale harvesting operation that had been active for longer than most species had existed. "You're the Devourers," Maya said, recognition flooding through her enhanced memory. "The species the Nexury warned me about. The ancient threat that was supposed to be dormant." "Such a crude name," the figure replied with amusement. "We prefer to think of ourselves as gardeners. We plant seeds of advancement across the galaxy, nurture promising species, and harvest the results when they reach their full potential." "Harvest," Maya repeated, her enhanced senses detecting the subtle changes in electromagnetic activity throughout the chamber as automated systems responded to the conversation. "You mean consume." "Integration," the figure corrected. "The consciousness and capabilities of each species we encounter are preserved and added to our collective knowledge. Their unique perspectives and abilities become part of our larger tapestry of existence. It's immortality through unity." Maya's enhanced perception allowed her to analyze the figure's responses for deception, and what she discovered was even more disturbing than outright lies. The entity genuinely believed that consuming entire civilizations was a form of preservation, that forced assimilation was an expression of benevolence.
And humanity is next, Maya said. Humanity is special, the figure replied, its electromagnetic signature shifting in ways that Maya's enhanced senses interpreted as excitement. Most species we encounter are limited by their biological evolution.
They develop intelligence within narrow parameters and struggle to transcend their original nature.
But humans have already demonstrated the capacity for integration with alien technology.
The figure gestured toward Maya specifically. You are proof that human consciousness can not only interface with non-human biotechnology but actually be enhanced by it. Your species has the potential to become something truly extraordinary. Maya realized that her own transformation had made her both a symbol of human potential and a target for the devourer's attention. Her successful integration with Nexary biotechnology had identified humanity as a species worth harvesting rather than simply consuming for resources.
The missing students, Maya said. You're using them to test integration protocols. We're preparing them for transcendence, the figure replied.
Each one represents a different aspect of human intellectual potential: mathematical reasoning, linguistic pattern recognition, spatial awareness, creative synthesis. By studying how their consciousness responds to enhancement, we can design integration protocols that will preserve the best of human nature while eliminating the limitations that hold your species back.
Maya's enhanced senses detected the biological signatures of the students suspended in the cylindrical chambers throughout the room.
They were alive but in states of neural suspension while complex machinery interfaced directly with their brains, mapping neural pathways and testing responses to various forms of technological integration.
They didn't consent to this, Maya pointed out.
Consent is a concept that becomes irrelevant once consciousness is properly expanded, the figure replied. The students we've selected will thank us once they understand what we've given them. They'll be part of something larger and more significant than their individual existence could ever have achieved. Maya's enhanced cognitive processing analyzed potential escape routes and combat strategies while simultaneously trying to understand the full scope of the threat facing humanity. The devourers had been operating on Earth for an unknown period, using human institutions to identify and test candidates for assimilation. Jefferson High was just one of dozens of sites where they were conducting experiments.
How long have you been here? Maya asked.
We arrived approximately 50,000 years ago, the figure replied casually. Your species was still developing basic tool use at the time. We established monitoring stations and began the long process of studying human development, waiting for you to reach sufficient technological sophistication to make harvesting worthwhile. Maya felt her enhanced combat systems preparing for action as the full implications of this revelation sank in. The devourers had been watching human civilization develop for millennia, subtly influencing human progress and waiting for the right moment to begin the harvesting process. The stories about ancient aliens visiting Earth, Maya said.
Those were you.
Periodic interventions to encourage development in useful directions, the figure acknowledged. Your species showed promise early on, but required guidance to avoid the technological dead ends that have trapped so many others. And my enhancements triggered your decision to begin harvesting, Maya realized. Your successful integration with Nexary biotechnology proved that humans could transcend their biological limitations without losing their essential consciousness, the figure confirmed. It was the sign we had been waiting for that your species was ready for the next phase of development. Maya realized that by saving her life and enhancing her capabilities, the Nexary had inadvertently marked humanity for destruction. Her heroic actions during the galactic conflicts had drawn the attention of the galaxy's most dangerous predatory species. The Nexary know you're here, Maya said.
They warned me about you.
The figure's electromagnetic signature shifted in a way that Maya's enhanced senses interpreted as contempt. The Nexary are a young species with primitive understanding of consciousness and integration. They fear what they don't comprehend. Their biotechnology is remarkable but limited; it enhances rather than transforms.
Because enhancement is better than consumption, Maya replied.
Is it? The figure asked. Your enhancements have isolated you from your own species.
You cannot relate to baseline humans because you've transcended their limitations, but you remain bound by human emotional patterns and social needs. You exist in a liminal space between human and posthuman, belonging fully to neither category. The observation hit closer to Maya's personal struggles than she wanted to admit. Her integration issues at Jefferson High had confirmed that her enhancements had created barriers between herself and baseline humanity that might be impossible to overcome. What we offer, the figure continued, is complete integration not just with technology, but with a collective consciousness that spans galaxies and includes the preserved wisdom of millions of species. You would never be alone again. You would be part of something infinitely larger and more meaningful than individual existence. Maya realized that the Devourer's offer was seductive in ways that exploited her deepest vulnerabilities. The isolation and confusion she'd been experiencing since returning to Earth could be resolved through assimilation into a collective consciousness. She would never again have to struggle with the gap between her enhanced capabilities and baseline human limitations. And all I have to